Hey Aubrey, what's up? What's happening?
Not too much going on over here. I just got back from volleyball not long ago. Just had time to
Fun.
squeeze in a shower. Lucky you. Lucky you guys.
Nice. I like that for what if it were like an all immersive experience watching us on YouTube? You could like smell and hear. No, they can already hear. You could smell.
Imagine if you could hear us. Imagine. But
But
smell. Smell would be an
the
addition.
like these mics do a really good job of just focusing on our voices because I can also hear like crazy sounds outside. I can hear my dogs in their kennels chewing on their bones, and you guys can't hear that, you
Yeah,
know?
luckily, the wind is howling outside my window right now,
Good
which is
vocab.
rare for here, but it's like I can hear it. Yeah, that is good vocab. And luckily the mic isn't picking it up because it's really loud.
Two bonus vocab phrases in there. One was squeeze in. So when you're
Mm.
talking about being able to do something you almost don't have time for, like you took just a real fast amount of time to do something quickly. Like I try to squeeze in a gym session even when I'm
Mm.
busy, and sometimes that means just going for like 20 minutes, which isn't very long, but I squeeze it in because it's important. And then the second vocab phrase to describe loud wind, howling wind. That's
Oh
very
man,
pretty
that
vocab.
really good. The squeeze in is going to be so useful on speaking part 1, I can imagine. I
Oh,
could
yeah,
any question you're asked, you could talk about how you have to squeeze in whatever it is they're asking about if you're
for sure.
busy.
Squeezing in grocery shopping, squeezing what like, yeah, you could use it for like
Mhm.
every part one question.
Yeah.
Okay. But we are really in love with writing this week because we're talking about writing again. We got some amazing emails from a student, a three key student, who asked about sort of some insider writing scoring questions. And then she also gave us a description of what happened to her on her exam, on her speaking test. So there's a lot of great information coming at you guys today. Okay, so let's get to it without further ado. Aubrey, can you read that first email that our student sent?
Yes, this is from Judy Ann. Hello, shout out Judy Ann. So she took our Three Keys course in 2019 and then wrote the IELTS exam in October 2019. She says, I remember that for the writing part, I used the Three Keys program's sentence structure for my essay. I was wondering, now that I have to take IELTS again, since IELTS is only valid for 2 years, can I still use the same paragraph structure and sentences, or will this hurt my score? Does IELTS look at my past exam answers for my upcoming test? The reason I ask is because when I booked a test scheduled for IDP, it asked me when my last IELTS exam was.
That is such a good question. I totally understand this like paranoid response to
Oh,
this question,
absolutely.
right? Because yeah, like okay, just to summarize the quick answer, no, they don't look at your past exams. But why do you think they ask that anyway? Why does IDP or British Council, wherever you're taking your test, when you register, why do they ask you when you took your last IELTS exam?
The only thing I can think of is I wonder if it makes their data entry processing easier. Like if they
Yeah,
can plug in your name and pull up past information that will just like
exactly.
populate. That's possible that for their computer program, it facilitates that for them because we know they're not going back and finding old exams and looking at them.
And also think about like who does what for the IELTS test. So the person that is looking at your registration information and putting you in the system, that's an admin person.
Mm.
That's not an examiner. That person just day in day out does like data entry basically, right? So yeah, it's exactly like Aubrey said. It's just for record keeping. So if you've already taken the exam with this center, you're in the system, that's easy. They can just pull you up, you know? It's
Mm.
purely for record keeping purposes. So here's the great news. No, nobody looks at your past exams, right? And like above that, beyond that, you even if you do take your test at the same center, but it's more than 2 years apart, the likelihood that the same person will be grading your writing is very low. And even if it is the same person, they're not going to remember an essay from 3 years ago. And even if they did, it wouldn't matter. You can't grade on anything besides what the essay is in front of you, right?
Exactly, right. This reminds me when I was teaching in the Bronx, right? Students would like when you're getting so many papers, so many essays, so many exams, forget ever remembering something that was turned in last year, right? But even
Yeah.
if they do, like you said, we know examiners, it's so strict what they can grade on. They have the scoring system there, and that's all they're focused on, right? So
Mhm.
they're not thinking about, well, I've seen this sentence structure online or in sample essays or in old nope, it doesn't matter, right? If that sentence structure is a high scoring sentence structure, that's what they care about.
That is a very good point, though, because we do get that question a lot. If I
Mhm.
use this template sentence, will that hurt my score? Right? No.
No.
This is great English. This is how we learn to produce great English. We see high level stuff and we use the high level stuff. You don't start from scratch, you don't invent new English. These chunks just exist in the world. And everybody who wants to write well copies to some extent other great writing. And no, we're not talking about full sentences. We're talking about amazing transition phrases mostly. Like
Exactly.
that's the stuff we're copying. Yeah.
Right? We each of these has meaning. So you're limited in how many you have to like introduce an example, for
Right.
example, right? So you're wanting to think about, okay, which of these are do all students know? And then can I try to learn a few that that maybe not every student knows, but you're still limited in how many actually exist.
Totally. Like, yeah, exactly. You can't invent new example phrases. We just did an episode about, for example, for instance, and then higher level transition phrases that are synonymous with those, but more rare, therefore higher scoring.
Right.
We didn't invent those. We didn't make those up. They already existed, right? If you try to invent your own phrase, like I've seen students try to combine two other
Mm,
phrases. So maybe they see as a shining example and then they see as a case in point. Maybe they're trying to be like as a shining example point or something and try to
mm.
invent something new.
Make it
You
band 9
wouldn't.
because no one will have used it. No, it doesn't work
No.
that way,
It
unfortunately.
doesn't. That phrase does not exist in our language.
Right.
Don't use it. All right. So I had a wonderful exchange with this student. I did answer her immediately. Um, with the same advice we just gave you guys. Don't worry about it. If these sentences work the first time, use them the second time, right? What's that phrase? If it ain't broke, don't fix it idea.
Yes.
Um, so she replied, she's like, thank you so much. And then she sort of shared some of her experience that she had on her last exam. So I want to get into this because there's some very good advice in here.
All right, so let's see. She said the speaking part had some questions that totally threw me off. I had 4 questions revolving around dreams in part 2, and I don't think my answers made a lot of sense, nor my sentence structure was any good. I guess you could say I was rattled with a question I never thought I would be asked. So because I know there's only one question for part 2, do you think she meant part 1 here or part 3? If she had
um
4 questions, probably part
Yeah,
1,
it's
right?
one of 2 things. It's either part 1 or she's talking about the part 2 topic card, and there's,
Oh,
the one
yeah.
describe a blah, 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 and then 3 bullet points. So there's essentially 4 bits of information. So
Ah.
it's one of the 2, but, um, her vocab is so good, to say I was thrown off, right? The
Mm,
questions threw me off. We could use that on the test, in part 3 if you get asked, a real weird question about the future of time travel. I don't know. You're like, "Ooh, that sort of throws me off a bit. I've never thought about time travel, but let's give it a go."
yes, and rattled, right? She says, "I
Yeah,
was rattled by a
so
question I
good.
never thought I would be asked." You could also use that on IELTS. Anytime you could say, "This question has left me a little bit rattled." Of course, don't use that if they're asking, like, "What do you like to do on the weekend?" But if it's something that you would have to think about that's a little bit more thought-provoking, that would be a great filler phrase.
Totally. So she did get good scores the first time. I don't have those exact scores, but I know she did well because she goes on in the email to say, that even though she was rattled, right? she still was able to finish the test well, even though she felt like she didn't do a good job. She had our strategies to fall back on. And she said, I think it's a good tip to the listeners of IELTS Energy that it's okay to mess up, because she feels like she messed up, but she still got a good score. Right. So I like that part. And then I love her next bit of advice. Aubrey, can you read that?
So she said, if I had to do it over, even if I messed up, I should have thought something along the lines, oh gosh, I dropped the ball on that one, didn't I? I guess this is more nerve wracking than I thought, that I suddenly lost track of what I'm going to say. Well, anyway, as I was saying, so it sounds like she kind of got
So good.
stumped, kind of lost her train of thought, and she was wishing that she had a prepared phrase of something she could say if that were to happen, which is a good idea.
These guys, you should just write all of those words down. They're so good. Like, if you feel like you messed up, went off track, talked about the wrong thing, whatever. If you feel like you messed up on speaking, you could say, "Oh gosh, I dropped the ball on that one, didn't I?" It's so good.
It's so true. She has such great advice here to make it clear that if you make one mistake or you lose your train of thought on IELTS, it's not like, well, it's all over, give up, and just be like, I'll show myself to the door. No, you
I'll
still
show
have lots
myself.
of.
What if she full on got up in the middle of the speaking test and was like,
Oh,
"I'm out.
all
This
right.
is not working for me."
We'll try again next year. No, right? No, that's not the men instead, realize you absolutely can make a mistake or to lose your train of thought and still get to good
Sure.
scores. There are all
Yeah.
these other questions. You have something native and natural like that to say like, "Wow, dropped the ball on that one. That left me a little bit rattled." And you still can have all this great vocab, all these great sentence structures with all your other questions and still
Yep.
get a good score.
Yeah, I love it. So lots of fantastic advice that we got from just one simple email exchange with a wonderful three keys student. Guys, if you want access to the same system of strategies, remember we have some very exciting updates coming soon. Go to allearsenglish.com/KEYS and get in now. All right, awesome. Aubrey, thanks for chatting today.
Yep, we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.